From the redwoods of California to the hills of Tennessee to the Rockies in the Sunshine State and Maine with that bright and shining sea. From coast to coast in North America, it's time for your host with the most, bringing you all the entertainment news that should be fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the show that explains entertainment and gives journalists the next day's headlines. It's the Pro Show Live!
Hello, howdy, and how are you folks? Happy to have everybody here with us on a Sunday evening as we get ready to go. And that's right, folks, everybody is on stage all at once because this thing is so packed full of content today that we simply could not go away with doing perhaps intros of every, 5 minutes. Here's a new person. No! You get us all at once, an explosion of personalities right here. Culture Casino, Ron Coleman, Mexican Iron Man, who seems just a wee bit startled, and X-Wing, who is never, ever demure. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you, and don't worry, folks, we will be having, got a little bit of a mic pop from somebody somewhere. Hopefully we get that resolved, but folks, don't worry, we've also got female representation on the way, and by the way, she will be increasing the IQ of everybody involved. Michelle of Force of Light will be joining us ASAP. All right, folks, well, we're going to get started with a heck of a show today, and we're going to be talking about what is going on with entertainment, where it is intersecting with politics. Before we do, though, folks, I'm going to take a brief pause. Mike, are you getting the audio issues that I'm hearing?
Your audio sounds like crap.
Well, that would be a problem. Mike, how do we sound now? Well, that's better. All right,
say it in Spanish.
Lo siento mucho, amigos. But, okay, hopefully this will be resolved. We didn't have this problem before. Culture, take the lead on what we've been watching out of entertainment while I get this audio issue fixed.
Well, as you know, and that audio issue is from Mr. Mexican Iron Man. As you know, we experienced a very strange situation yesterday, probably one of the most remembered things that any of us will have going forward in our life. And what happened was the mainstream media went very much out of their way to slow play it, downplay it, and that just continued on and on. But the problem is that every level of media, as Pro and I talked about this morning, has approached this in not just an irresponsible way, but probably in a way that will cause even further harm in the future. And Pro, I'm glad you're back. Please pick it up.
Well, we did not realize that Mike would sabotage us in such a terrible way. Terrible, Mike. Terrible. But we'll get Mike fixed. Mike, you're actually muted at the moment until we get this fixed. Let's Mike. Oh no, sorry, Mike. You're gonna have to head to Radio Shack and get that mic fixed for Mike.
You're the one who keeps muting me.
I know, because you're making popping noises. It sounds like Orville is over there with you.
Right,
right
I'm
now.
the problem.
Well, you were, but now Culture says
Sounds
your
good
loose
now.
cable has been. Oh, we'll get him back, folks. We'll get him back. You all know that you need a Mexican Iron Man. All right, despite the shenanigans. That's right. Despite the shenanigans of the start here, let's go ahead and bring up our first super chats. Then we're going to get in the news, folks. Lots to cover, and we're not going to shy away from where entertainment and politics intersect. We simply will not shy away from that. We believe in covering everything and keep you ahead of the culture curve. It's very important. Araxis has gifted 5 WDW Pro memberships, and we want to say a huge thank you to Araxis for doing so. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. We also have from Araxis a member chat, member for 15 months, with VR out of the way. Wonder what that acronym stands for. I'm not sure. Pro makes his move to the coveted Live at 5 Sunday slot. Will he be able to hold this prestigious mountain throne? Well, don't worry, folks. Valiant Renegade will return next Sunday. He is in transit right now, heading back to his sweet swamplands of Louisiana, and he will return to you. He says live at 5. I still say this is 6. And let's see if we've got Mike. Folks, we'll get Mexican Iron Man back in just a second. Looks like we may have his audio issues resolved. Packing Protons for $10. Do you think Disney is happy with Mark Hamill right now? Packing Protons, how did you figure out the show, the itinerary? How can you possibly know that? Despite towing the company line. It's amazing some people just won't wake up and believe what's going on right in front of their eyes. Totally agree with you there, Mike. Sorry, Mike, you're still having audio issues. We'll bring you back in just a few. All right. Continuing right along, we've got Donna Hergenrether, who says, I met Jonas J. Campbell. Just so everyone knows, he is truly a great dude. And Mexican Iron Man is my newest hero. Have a great show. Donna, it is so good to hear from you, and very, very great that you got to meet Jonas J. Campbell.
Do you see who's in that profile picture?
I do.
That's
All right,
funny.
and Cyrano 2960 has gifted 5 WDW Pro memberships as well. And Cyrano, we always appreciate your support. Thank you so much, everybody. It is time to get to the news. We'll give Mike one more shot on the audio. Mike, survey says... Wait, you've muted yourself, Mike. You have to unmute yourself, Mike.
There we go.
Mike?
I'm afraid it's talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mexican Iron Man finally. And you know what? Just to celebrate that we have Mexican Iron Man with full audio capabilities enabled. Mike, can you read this super chat, please?
Magister Amaris for $5 says, after the last Accolade after party, I wanted to say the sociopath coffin twins, Andy and Laylee, are more likable and stable than the Nepo twins. They grow.
Well, let me tell you, the Acolyte, I don't know. I mean, X-Wing, maybe you can talk about this better than I can. I don't have any anticipation for the final episode. The writing is so bad, I don't care what's in the final episode, and I don't know what will be in the final episode. There's no tension whatsoever.
You're going to love it, buddy. You're going to love it. I've seen the leaks. It's incredible.
By the way, I've heard, X-Wing, that the people who are behind the Acolyte are the same people who messed up Mike's audio, and we've got a live feed of it. Hang on, folks. Here's the culprits. Here's Murphy.
The crab people shall finally reign supreme.
Crab people.
Only because Jonas is not here to stop me. All right, continuing right along. Mike, read this one for us, please.
JWT6577, who's been a member for 1 month, since in a member chat that says, rest in peace, Shannon Doherty from Mallrats.
Yes, and from many other programs as well. And quite the starlet of the 90s.
Richard Spake, who's been a member for a year, says Pro would be the perfect voice for Alf in a reboot. Yeah, but we're not going to make any crap like that because we are all about quality programming on this channel, and we don't believe in crap.
Mike, we're losing you again. Mike, something's cutting into the...
You're the one who's out of this world, sweet baby.
And we've lost Mike. He's done with the show. He's out. He's not doing this ever again.
Wait, is my audio really jacked up, or did you just use
that?
Well,
it was at the beginning of the show. You sound great now.
You're fine now.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to the news, folks. Mike, are you ready? You good to go on this?
I forgot how much Jonas gets interrupted on this show. Okay, I guess I'm the Jonas for today. All right.
I love it. All right, here we go, folks. All right, we are starting off with the wonderful world of Disney, and Disney is in quite the conundrum because Disney does not seem to want a particular candidate to be in the White House, and that seems to be jading them in the way that they are handling the events of yesterday. Now, I want to set the stage and set the table in the correct way, folks, because quite a few people out there have not treated this with the necessary gravitas, and you've probably seen that if you've been paying attention to any of your social media feeds or watching anything to do with the lamestream. And what I mean by this is that yesterday, we all, and I don't mean this metaphorically, we all dodged a bullet, because had the events of yesterday been about 2 or 3 millimeters different, or had a head not been turned at just the right moment, we're talking about miraculous stuff yesterday. Had that not happened, the landscape of today's society would be so vastly different and so catastrophically different that it's difficult to even conceptualize. Rather than what we have been hearing about and talking about, last night could have been filled with scenes of absolute chaos all throughout the United States. You would have had the RNC convention up in absolute chaos, to be redundant there, but you would have had a maelstrom in politics of trying to figure out what to even do in this situation. And you'd have been faced with a scenario where the supporter of one party had eliminated the other party's candidate at the same time that the other party is attempting to perhaps swap out their own candidate, and you would have seen, I mean, it would have been one of the greatest tragedies in the history of America. It would have destabilized the entire world. I don't think I'm overselling this. Ron, is it fair to say that this was very close to absolute tragedy at the highest levels of society?
Yes.
Ron, fair to say?
I'm just listening to what you're saying. You're saying just but for an inch, but for a little bit of wind, but for God's grace, a little bit of divine providence, everything would be different. That is what you're saying, right?
I guess here's what I'm asking before we watch this, because I want people to understand the degree to which we really escaped a horrific situation. It would not have just been somebody died, and that was bad enough, and somebody did die. We would have been thrown into tumult. But Ron, if that had happened, what would have been the implications politically and legally for our world? What would today have been like instead?
It would be so unprecedented. It would, I think, the closest analogy I can think of is the assassination of Lincoln. More than JFK.
And I agree with that.
Because Lincoln was assassinated at a time when there was a great instability in the country. He was a truly unique leader. JFK, for all his merits, and he definitely had merits. Let's not be so partisan about everything. I think he's, when I was growing up, he was a little bit deified, and I think we're a lot more realistic about him now. But he was president, and there was a vice president, and that vice president was able to take the reins and be reelected. But this would have been the sort of chaos that we had in the midst of not quite a civil war, but socially and politically and culturally, yes, a civil war. It would have been absolutely catastrophic. I agree with you.
Right. And okay, so we're all on the same page. Now, with that understood, one would hope that at this juncture in history, and having just seen how close we came to that scenario, that at least for a day, at least for 24 to 48 hours, the mainstream corporate media could have provided us with enough truth and enough sober analysis that we could have been unifying. And it just so happens that many of our entertainment corporations either are the same corporations that control the news, or they're subsidiaries of such. Now, the Walt Disney Company happens to own ABC News. And here we have the analysis of this situation from ABC News. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. This from Wesley Hunt on the X platform, and it says this: leave it to ABC News to blame former President Trump for his own assassination attempt. Look at how upset they are now that, in their own words, and they say the date, which is not allowed to be said on YouTube, will be in the background. This is contemptible. Folks, we're going to watch this, and then we're going to give our analysis of this. In particular, though, here's what I want you all to pay attention to. Remember that we don't shy away from politics when it intersects with entertainment. In particular, folks, what we are aiming to do here today is we're going to give this the Gina Carano standard. And we're going to do this multiple times in the show. Remember what they fired Gina Carano for. And I'm not ready to quibble on whether or not she was fired. She was let go from major projects in the future that she was going to have and are alleged to have been promised to her. Does this rise to the Gina Carano standard for letting someone go? Here we go. This is out of ABC News, George Stephanopoulos, employee of the Walt Disney Company under Mr. Bob Iger.
President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. In January, warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And of course, in March, he said, now, if I don't get elected, for the whole, that's going to be the least that it's.
All right, let's pause there, because what they're attempting to do is take statements and then conflate those with statements of violent rhetoric. The problem is that when they say this, for example, that Trump had said that there was going to be a bloodbath, excuse me, that there was going to be a bloodbath. The problem is he was referring specifically and without question about an economic bloodbath, specifically in the automobile industry. And so this is what I find to be disgusting, is that the Walt Disney Company, via ABC News, is taking a moment that we faced tremendous potential for tragedy, unlike anything we've seen in 150 years, and they are equivocating that in a way to downplay it and to spread blame to the victims of the attack. Panel, am I missing anything? And if I'm wrong in calling out Disney for this, considering they own this, they own The View, they own Joy Behar, etc. If I'm misplacing this blame, you all tell me.
I think you're not going hard enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you do it for me, Culture. What do we got?
Well, I mean, initially, the minute this lady starts speaking, she starts speaking about the violence that occurred prior to the previous election. It was massive. It was sustained, and it was done without reason. Across the board, it was allowed to continue, and she is juxtaposing his statements, speaking about that violence. In stark contrast, what happened yesterday? Did you see violence in the streets? Did you see chaos? Did you see the complete meltdown of one entire side of the aisle? Of course not. And this is one of the areas in which that was certainly mischaracterized. They've gone to extreme lengths to repeat the same lies again and again, to try to draw the same hate in the same way. What created the circumstance where you had a young person climb on the top of the roof to do what they did? It's the journalism like this coming out of Disney, who also likes to speak directly to your children through their forms of entertainment. I don't think it's quite harsh enough, but I'll be as careful as I can on YouTube.
So well, let's bounce with that. So to flow with that idea, if it's the Walt Disney Company that is doing this through ABC News, and they own ABC News, so they have the say in what these people are going to say online and promulgate all throughout the airwaves of America, it seems to me that this is escalation, not unification. In other words, what they're doing is they're attempting to say this was in some way justified, and the victim should be held accountable because he's been saying things. And then they use these things which are clearly false if you have at least 15 neurons in your brain that are still firing. So to me, this seems like the perfect example of where Bob Iger could step down and pull out the Roseanne Barr banhammer that he apparently loves so much, get out the Gina Carano gavel, and say to ABC News, we're done with this. We're not going to continue to participate in these partisan attacks, this propaganda that results in violence in our country. X-Wing, any thoughts on this?
I'm having a tough time trying to figure out who their demographic truly is. And I will do my best to temper my words here because I'm furious. I've been furious since the events of yesterday. Coming from the younger generation, I think a lot of people believe that we're eating this stuff up, that we're believing it. And I have to wonder, who is the target audience? Is it 15 to 25-year-olds who are impressionable and then just the mentally ill? I don't understand how this continues, because it's sheer lunacy playing out in front of our eyes. And I truly believe that people who are actually on screen don't believe a word that they're saying. They can't. And if they're that moronic, then they need to be put away. That's the bottom line.
These are political operatives who don't know where the end of the leash should be. Like, they don't understand that there are certain parameters that they should not pass by them. And they just go on as if this is just mundanity, when it's not. It's clear, as Ron said, this put us at the edge of catastrophe like we've not seen in more than a century, and they're still playing from the same playbook. And they don't recognize, apparently, that the whole world changed.
To stand on a pedestal and scream at others for sowing division while being the sole source of just, a sweatshop of sewing division. I mean, that's what they do. They do it for clicks. They're the worst grifters in the world, right? We're talking about the worst YouTubers in the world on the world stage. When does it stop? When does the accountability come in? When does everything that I was taught as a child of right and wrong actually get put into action for the people who are older than me? When does it happen?
Well, if it didn't happen after yesterday, it's not going to. That's the
It's
answer.
incredible.
It will not happen. And so that, but the good news about this is then that because of things like YouTube, because of X, we have the opportunity that was not held before, right? We don't have to be confined to the AM airwaves. We can actually speak out, and at least for now, and thank God for Elon Musk, but we can speak out and be heard. And the truth, I think yesterday, for example, I think the ability of folks to get out there and talk about what was happening in real time. If you were on X, if you were paying attention to X, you were at least 2 hours, probably more. You're actually probably something like 12 hours ahead of the mainstream media just by being on X. And I think that's a legitimate concept. So let's finish out this interview and we'll give our thoughts. And then, folks, I want to show you how Bob Iger reacted to a prior political event, and we'll see if we have something equating equal responses here.
The country, that will be the least of it. He said he was partly joking and that was taken out of context, but those are indeed his words. And you have heard it from supporters as well. And supporters are certainly in some parts angry. And let's remember January 6th. In so many ways for the campaign, January 6th will probably be in the background after yesterday's event. This is a very difficult time for this campaign. I'm sure this week in Milwaukee,
Ron, let me get your thoughts on that one, because to me that's
I
that's
can't
some kind of despicable when politics.
I couldn't hear what she said, so I
Oh, apologies. So what's going on there in that interview is that she says in the interview that the events of January 6th will now unfortunately be in the backdrop in comparison to what happened yesterday, and that it makes it difficult for the Biden campaign as a result. Any thoughts on the depravity of our news cycle?
When she says the Biden campaign, she's talking about herself.
Yes.
And everyone in the studio with her there. And she's 100% right. They have pushed it so far. And again, I'm not saying that anyone connected with either ABC or Disney or the Democratic National Committee or any, I don't believe this kid was 20 years old. You can call him a kid, whatever you want. That this scumbag shooter was anything other than acting independently. It seems to me, in fact, from what I've picked up, is that this is a guy who had nothing in his life and wanted to maybe be something before it came to an end. He had nothing and was going nowhere, and this was going to be his shining moment. We'll see how that plays out. But the grief here is for, first of all, they're pasting over their distress that it wasn't successful. Let's not kid ourselves. This is the worst possible outcome, because on the one hand, all the sympathy and all the outrage that has been generated is being generated, but it actually has somewhere to go. The best outcome here for them would have been for him to have been killed. So then there would be all this outrage and all this sympathy, and everyone would agree to establish blue ribbon panels and hold hearings. And of course, there would be no accountability. This is the United States government. No one in the federal government in a Democratic administration is ever held responsible for anything. But they would get rid of the threat to their hegemony, their political hegemony. So they're pretty upset about this. But they're speaking quite honestly. It does put January 6th, because January, see, the difference is this involves a gun. Actually,
right.
No, it's a similarity.
Exactly.
This involved a gun being fired at a Trump supporter the number one Trump supporter in the world, as well as the man who unfortunately was killed. And January 6th involved a gun being fired at a Trump supporter who was killed. That would be the biggest similarity.
Well, here's what they're saying. Of course, we just took a look, and when it comes out of a newspaper from Denver, whatever, the scope and scale of that impact is limited. But when it's coming from Disney and when it's coming from these major corporations that control not only the news but entertainment, that's when we take note, because essentially the news is what's happening in the present. Entertainment is that which is impacting the culture, and the culture is that which will be the political in the days ahead. All right, so Robert Iger releases this statement today. Now, it took quite a while to get this statement out of Bob. Maybe he was in a shower, but Bob had this to say. Bob said, "We are all thankful that President Trump was not severely injured, and I wish him a speedy recovery. I offer my most heartfelt condolences to the family of Corey Comparatori, who is the individual who was murdered by this depraved individual, and I am praying for the other victims of this unconscionable shooting. As a nation, we must all unite in condemnation of political violence." Now, why exactly did Bob Iger put out this statement? Well, I would suggest folks to take a look at this clip from Bill O'Reilly. Here's what he had to say.
How about ABC News? Their nightly news is responsible. Good Morning America, responsible. How about The View? A lot of hate. And the chief cheerleader of that hate is Joy Behar. And she has been doing this for decades. Decades. And she gets a check every week from Disney, which is run by a man named Bob Iger. Okay? Iger is apparently okay with Joy Behar, who's been there forever. Hating. Am I wrong? How about ABC News?
All right, so Bob Iger taking some fire from Bill O'Reilly. Bob Iger trying to get in front of this. However, folks, let's go back in the Wayback Machine, because Pro has a memory, and that memory reminds me of what Bob Iger did back in January of 2021. You see, folks, it turns out that Bob Iger did not simply release a statement, nor did just Bob Chapek, nor did the Walt Disney Company back then. Now we have an attempt to send our country into the dark ages and create chaos all throughout it. We'll see how they respond. We'll see if the scope and scale is similar. But this is how Bob Iger reacted back in January of 2021. Why does all of this matter, folks, in terms of entertainment analysis? Because January of 2021, if you can believe it, is when Disney decided it was going to transform itself even beyond what Bob Iger did to the company in order for him to potentially run in the Democratic primaries. Don't forget that that's the kind of crazy we live in, where the Disney company transformed itself on the heels of that event in January of 2021. We'll roll the tape. You decide for yourself. Here we go.
Well, I mean, Bob has talked about this eloquently since he's become CEO. I'll say a couple of things about it. We've tended to shy away from politics. And in doing so, I think we've shied away from talking about issues that aren't political at all, like the issues that we're talking about today. Because we believe in doing so, maybe it looks like we're taking a stand. Well, in that reality, we should be taking a stand. By the way, I take responsibility for this. I was CEO for 15 years. And so I manage the company's public-facing processes.
Now, folks, we won't watch the whole thing. I know we're having some technical issues on some of these videos, but I just want to say, Bob Iger was fully on board with getting this company into politics following that event in January, and he goes forward and talks about it. And by the way, this is how we got the revamped and powered up Reimagine Tomorrow. This is how we had the introspection to try to find anything that could possibly offend the left and alter this company. This is how we started seeing classic Disney Americana labeled as offensive and part of a lesser time in our history that needs to be viewed as such. This is how they began to chip away at the legacy of Walt, was through this. And I just want to ask the panel, do you guys think we'll have anything approximating a similar response, or do you think we get a 3-sentence statement from Bob Iger and that's sufficient? Keep amping up the hate, keep amping up ABC News and their division, and generating as much animosity towards Americans as we can.
I don't think he's involved.
It's a tough time. They can't get off the gas pedal right now. It's the most important time, right? I mean, Biden's in a bad spot. He's not looking incredible right now. I don't see any reason why ABC or anybody else won't stop peddling sedition to continue to gain traction.
Well,
I think what you said, X-Wing, is correct from the point of view of ABC News. But I don't think Bob Iger is operating at that level of management detail. I think what he's going to...
Should he be, though, in this kind of a scenario?
I'm sorry?
Should he be, though, given the seriousness of the moment?
I think that the only thing he cares about is, I mean, you've heard me say this many times, is his personal wealth. And what he's doing is what he believes, like when you say, should he be? He's not a moral person. He doesn't operate on a principle basis with respect to anything. So I could, on the list of things he should and shouldn't be doing, to tell you the truth, as CEO of the Disney Corporation, which has, ABC News is an institution, and ABC Network. They're institutions that existed well before they were acquired by Disney. They have their own culture, their own management, their own standards. And for him to all of a sudden now step in and try to tell them how to run things, that just can't go well for him. So he puts out this plain vanilla statement. Frankly, who the hell is even asking Bob Iger's view on it? I mean, what's the level in society that people are required to have an official statement on issues like this? I'm not being facetious. Did he have to say anything? Did every corporation?
No, I agree with you.
Every corporation have a statement? Isn't it obvious?
No, I agree with you, Ron. Where the corporations put themselves in a position where they have to make a statement is because on January 6th, all the corporations came out simultaneous and created a cacophony of condemnation. And so now they're in this position where they've all decided they're political in some way. They're all tied to ESG and DEI and the left-wing politics of the day. And by golly, they can't have it any other way.
They have every right in the world to still be political. You know what, frankly, what's astonishing to me, I don't know how long this is going to last. For all I know, it stopped already. The Biden campaign stopped running political ads. That's astonishing.
I give it a week. It is astonishing. I will agree with that.
Amazing to me that we are still civilized enough that, notwithstanding the fact that the absolute moral responsibility, and again, I'm a conservative, therefore I believe the shooter is responsible for the shooter's conduct. All the things. He's not a zombie. No one put him up to it. But if you want to talk about an atmosphere of accelerated hate and demonization, if you think those things are relevant, and they're not irrelevant, Biden has as much responsibility for this as anyone on earth. And yet they stopped running ads.
Yes.
Now, the fact of the matter is, I'll be a little cynical here. Of course, I'm Ron Coleman still. Presumably, they stopped running ads because they realized it would come across really bad. It would come across really bad. And those
Can I be even more cynical, Ron?
What's that?
Can I be even more cynical and say someone there may have said, all these donors are refusing to pay us unless he drops. This is a great time to pull back and seem magnanimous.
Yeah, but also it would the stuff that was queued up, I'm sure, was going to be the usual really vicious personal stuff. It wasn't as if they could have stepped back and said, let's run the grade B ads where we just talk about our successes and our policies. It's all about the demonization. So that would have come across, like that was just common sense. But nonetheless, it's a modicum of decency that we should at least appreciate. So I'm not so much. I've never been a defender of Bob Iger here, but I don't think this is his job, and I don't think this is really his problem. That's my.
It shouldn't be his job. He needs to. Let's put it this way. I would be a happy camper if Bob Iger no longer weighed in on major historic moments and Disney went back to being a children's entertainment corporation.
Bro, I would be a happy camper. We got a guest in the back. I'd be a happy camper if you let her on.
Well, fantastic, folks. Let's bring on someone who is an absolute force of light, and we're delighted to have her. Folks, please welcome. That's right, a great segue. Welcome aboard, Michelle. Happy to have you. And as you hop in, you've been busy with convention stuff. You've been busy hanging out with Gina and the rest, and Valiant has been bouncing all around you. But Michelle, have you had a chance to catch the
Valiant post any more pictures with Michelle? Can you...
we got a good one last night. I think he posted. I'm not sure.
Oh
yeah, he posted it.
He posted
every
it.
single one.
That's not even counting the ones he sent to his friends.
Yeah.
I assume you knew he was taking.
So, Michelle,
he's married and you're a woman of God, and I'm jealous.
You know what? Here you go, Mike. There you go, Mike. You can be right over there with Michelle. No. I can't trust you with that. No. Michelle, you've been watching some of the coverage, I'm sure, of the event from yesterday. In particular, we've been discussing the Walt Disney Company and ABC News. What's been your take on how this has been handled by the mainstream?
Well, I'm not sure how. You'll have to inform me because I've been so busy on how ABC News handled it. But I actually was discussing that on our live stream just a few minutes ago. Not that I go for CNN for my news anyways, but anyone who happens to be out there that maybe just grew up watching CNN or whatever, after the absolute disgraceful thing that they put out after a former president and a current leading candidate to become the next president was shot at, and their article they put out was Trump falls down. Like, no more information given. These people are frauds. I mean, they're not journalists. They're not covering news. They showed you who they are. Like, they do not care about the truth. They are just protecting what they want.
Well, I think that is well said. And hopefully this can be a moment where the better voices gain more and more attention, and we can begin to push out the charlatans who would mislead and sow division amongst all otherwise well-meaning Americans.
I think there's another angle here related to what you were talking about in that video clip. We got to remember that Bob Iger at one point, we forget that Bob Iger at one point was on the short list of the top 4 Democrat candidates for president a couple of elections ago. And from his book, Pro, and from that clip, which, by the way, you actually did, I think, besides mentioning it today, I've heard you talk about it in greater depth on previous shows, which has been brilliant. But the thing about him is I think he cannot resist the temptation to say something and at least remind the left side of the aisle that he's still out there as the head of Disney, as a CEO, as someone who once was who once was literally, he was on the short list. I mean, he was he didn't make it to the debates, but he was being poised. And between his platform of running ABC and Disney, he should have been a lock, and then the politics went a different direction on him.
Well, it was below him, Mike. He's Bob Almighty.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Because in his book, he wrote that. I mean, I can't remember the exact line when I read the book, but essentially he said the only other job that he thinks that might be worth his time would be president of the United States, because to be head of Disney, there's no country head of country that could compare, something like that. But I think he can't resist but make a statement and see himself like he's some kind of important voice, when really he should take your advice, Pro, and stay the hell out of this thing completely. And more importantly, what he should do is provide some leadership with ABC and said, look, we've got to be the fair, unbiased, we got to be the gold standard, which ABC News once was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. ABC News and all of its affiliates and all of its segmented and merchandise franchise shows. They were all merchandise. All of the shows that it markets and sells to these local markets for things like The View and all that, which are now super opinionated. Once upon a time, ABC News was known as being fair and unbiased, and I think that's what you're getting at, Pro. But I think Bob, as you've aptly picked up from that video, he can't resist. He just can't resist making a statement when that is the last thing that Disney should do amidst everything else that's been going on.
Old habits die hard. I think that's what's going on.
Can you guys refresh me? What did Bob say about, I mean, how do you say something other than just you hate what happened over this situation?
Boilerplate condemnation. Just boilerplate condemnation.
He put out this statement, Michelle. This is the Bob Iger statement. The problem is that on ABC, what I have been unhappy with, and that's an understatement, is that on ABC News, they seem to be blaming the victim. So they are attempting to use hoaxes and all kinds of propaganda to claim that Trump has said things which clearly he did not, or are being connotated in a false way, in order to say that, well, he's to blame for being shot. I mean, we're talking about someone who was shot. You know, all of us are incredibly lucky that it only hit his ear, but the president was shot, and they're coming out and say, well, he gets what he deserves because he was using incendiary language that we made up. I guess not to say he doesn't use incendiary language. But.
So my angle, Michelle, is this: is that what he said is great. However, he shouldn't have to say anything as head of ABC, and if he is going or head of Disney, and if he is going to say anything, he shouldn't be a hypocritical bastard CEO when down line in management and on the front lines of media in that same company, they're saying all the things that Pro's covered thus far that they're doing. You know, he's up here, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? Just shut your mouth, or if you are going to open your mouth, at least don't be don't be a hypocrite with what's really happening in your organization. That would be like
duplicitous. My name is Bob.
That'd be like Mexican Iron Man Productions announcing a new Alf line of merchandise when the company and its CEO hate Alf.
That's right. And just like with Mexican Iron Man Incorporated, I think that's what we're calling it, right? We never leave a super chat behind because we follow the exemplar that is Mike, Mexican Iron Man. Mike, read it for us, please. Can I ask you guys
a serious question really quick before you do that, Mike? Did the CEO of Costco put a statement out?
No,
did the CEO of Costco?
I don't think so.
Just a quick. Well, then.
Oh, that's your point. Got it. Yeah. See, that's what I mean right there. This guy.
Shut up.
Sorry. Costco raised the price on their hot dogs by 3 cents during the time, so that they. You got to get it out when it won't hurt you. All right, here we go.
Packing Protons for $2 says we lost our three: Richard Simmons and Dr. Ruth.
That's been a rough 24, 48 hours in terms of celebrities and man, it's no fun seeing some of these people move on.
Yeah, I've always wondered what it was going to be like when I got older and people my age or younger or a little older than me would start dying, and now we are here, and it's really weird. It's really weird. Hashtag not a Mexican spring chicken. Dan's Life at the Kingdom for $2 says blame it on DEI hire for Secret Service. No bueno.
Well, the head of Secret Service, and Ron, I don't know if you want to talk about incompetence here, but the head of Secret Service apparently was previously working at Pepsi and defending Cheetos. That's the that was the prior position.
Service for like 23 years before that.
Oh, what?
Now, Ron, that is not as sensational. How dare you, sir? How dare you give us actual logic and depth of the analysis?
Angle more.
She failed to. She reached a point at the Secret Service, evidently, where she failed to advance any further, which is in and of itself unremarkable. That happens to most people in most organizations. She moved over to PepsiCo, where somebody with their kind of experience is going to be very useful, and if they're good at planning security for. For corporate executives, but
highly dangerous atmosphere.
Obviously, she was hired back to the Secret Service because she's a chick. And it now becomes and she has been interviewed and featured many times in the last couple of years of talking about her goals, her goals about getting more women into the Secret Service and more representation. So, it's not the fact that she was at PepsiCo before. Frankly, I wouldn't mind if more department heads in the federal government had private sector experience, but not this one. Whatever.
Darn it, you turned it around where I almost agree with this. Darn you, Ron. You're persuasive. Have you thought about going into a career field that requires persuasion in any way?
We know for a fact that she didn't get the job done. She had one job.
Yeah, not be a DEI hire. All right, next super chat. I put a bunch of offensive videos on Twitter about this issue. All right, our buddy Jay, great supporter of the channel, as are so many others, has gifted 5 WDW Pro memberships. Make sure your notifications are on. Grab the memberships quick. And Pro, just as an FYI.
The letter of the day is J.
J. Yeah. What an FYI. Good job, Mike. That's a great FYI. It is the letter of the day.
FYI, also FYI, Michelle's to leave in 11 minutes.
Michelle, right? We need you for at least 12. Hang tight.
Okay.
All right, I'll go faster. Nathan Rodriguez.
At least 12.
Nathan Rodriguez for 5. The Accolade is worse than Velma, Indiana Jones 5, and I can't wait for season 2. Media disaster. 20 times Disney is the worst.
Ouch. Nathan, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for the sentiment.
Mega Combat has been a member for 1 month. Welcome aboard the team, Mega Combat. Just one word for the mainstream media. Disgusting.
Agreed.
Slim Jim Hoff has become a YouTube member. Thank you, Slim Jim. Welcome to the crew.
Welcome. Glad to have you. And because we have Michelle for just a short amount of time, folks, it's time to go to the next thing in line. This is really something, though. Remember, we need to use the Gina Carano standard here about who should stay and who goes away. And today we're talking about Mark Hamill. Now, folks, before we get into reading what Mark Hamill had to say, I need to give just a little bit of background here. We've reported repeatedly here on this channel that we believe that Mark Hamill is working on the Mandalorian movie set to come out in 2026 under the direction of one Jon Favreau, co-written and co-directed with Dave Filoni, and undoubtedly the talons and tendrils of Kathleen Kennedy all throughout it. Not a good sip of coffee to be found on any other production sets. Her barista skills are not impressive. Folks, here is what our dear friend Mark Hamill had to say. Ignore me up here. You know what? We'll read what I had to say. But first, let's read Mark's, okay? So Mark Hamill, again, folks, entertainment, celebrities, they can't contain themselves. We wish they would stop talking about this stuff because then we would be talking about the box office, but they cannot get out of their own way. Mark Hamill says, there is no place for violence in politics ever. I'm grateful the former president is okay. That said, never forget that this is the guy who promised the NRA he would do nothing on gun control and told victims of shootings to just get over it. So, Donald Trump, nearly assassinated, someone dies, people are critically injured, and Mark Hamill decides that he is going to put out falsehoods. And I'm going to show you that it's false in just a moment. But I said to this, Mark Hamill uses an attempted assassination in which at least one person was murdered to promote false partisan propaganda. Mark should be removed from the Mandalorian movie production. And I make that on the basis of what happened to Gina. Because Gina just said, hey, maybe we should stop hating each other. And that was enough to get rid of her. So, folks, since Mark Hamill says that Donald Trump, maybe he didn't deserve it, but we shouldn't forget about him saying that you got to get over it when people get shot. Here's what he actually had to say, folks. We'll go to the original video and see if Mark Hamill is a douchebag or if he's got something legitimate to say here. Here's the video.
Bro, don't forget, she changed her pronouns to beep, bop, boop as well. That was violence.
Oh, travesty.
Victims and families touched by the terrible school shooting yesterday in Perry, Iowa. To the entire community, we love you, we pray for you, and we ask God to heal and comfort really the whole state and the pain that you have. This is something that's very unique to your state. We're really with you as much as anybody can be. It's a very terrible thing that happened, and it's just horrible to see that happening. That's just horrible. So surprised to hear. have to get over it. We have to move forward. We have to move forward. But to the relatives and to all of the people that are so devastated right now, to a point they can't breathe, they can't live, we are with you all the way. We're with you, and we love you and cherish you.
All right, so let's go back to the comment by Mark Hamill. Now we've seen the original in its full context. He told victims of shootings to just get over it. Okay, guys, I got to say, I think that this kind of rhetoric out of people like Mark Hamill, if you're going to fire Gina Carano over what she said and what she did, then Mark Hamill's got to go. He can't be Luke Skywalker no mo. I know, Michelle, you got to go, so why don't you weigh in first and let us, what do you think in comparison to what Gina did versus what Mark is doing here, which I think is absolutely vile? What do we do with the standard they set?
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't, their standard is very simple. You agree with them or you're gone. So that is their standard. It is what it is. I think we should all keep that in mind with how we spend our money. Let me requote the words that were used about who I just got to meet this weekend and who was as lovely as she always comes across in person. And as she said when I was up there and I was talking about her case, as she said, I don't have anything to hide, but they have everything to hide. These people said that she was abhorrent. What she was trying to get across, as you said, which was really just don't hate anyone. So basically, that is
fair.
what Disney. Yeah, it is. So that is their standard. You either walk the line of their political beliefs, Bob Iger and everyone else, or a lot of other people there's political beliefs, or you're gone. So that is their standard. But as far as Mark Hamill, to me, what's most pathetic in that, besides the fact that, as you pointed out, Trump didn't say that, and he's spreading misinformation, is the fact that there, with certain things, there's a time and a place. And I would say that to both sides on certain issues. But good Lord, someone just lost their son, their spouse, their father maybe, and they're trying to grapple with what just happened. As a nation, we just watched a former president get shot at, which I've not witnessed in my lifetime. And Mark Hamill wants to talk about gun control. I mean, get over yourself, Mark. Like not the right time nor the place. If you want to talk about gun control, have at it, but don't do it literally dancing on the grave of someone who just died in less than 24 hours since that person died.
And misrepresenting what the man who shot said. It's insane.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
X-Wing, you seem to be disagreeing. Your face says
Not
you're not
at
at all in agreement with any of us here at all.
I just think shame needs to make a really big comeback in America. Shame really needs to come back.
Amen.
You know what I'll do is I'll reference from a great man, Ronald Reagan. I will reference a quote. He was shot. He was taken to the hospital. He's bleeding in his lung, and he looks at the doctors and he says, "I hope none of you guys are Democrats," because he just had an attempt on his life. And the doctor looked at him and said, "Today we're all Republicans, Mr. President." That's how you respond.
Right. Where is that sentiment? Where is that sentiment today from people like Mark Hamill? And if you don't, if you can't weigh in without misrepresenting the person who has just been shot at an event where people died, then don't weigh in at all. It's that simple. Just, if you can't do it, then don't do it. Mark, we're sorry. Yeah. Could you at least embody the spirit of Luke Skywalker for a moment of your life? Just do it for a moment. Culture, any thoughts?
Of course I did that. Look, mom taught us this, at least most good moms. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. That's essentially what X-Wing, yourself, and everybody is saying. And look, everything that I needed to know I learned in kindergarten is somewhat accurate. If you were taught properly, you learned civility, how to be polite, courtesy, et cetera, et cetera. You learn manners. You learn to consider the larger things around you. And that's when your world kind of grew. That's when your worldview really, truly started to shift as a young person, was right about kindergarten. And so I always go back and say, okay, if I just apply the old rules that I grew up with, I probably am going to be safe. Mark Hamill's never been safe. In fact, he's quite detestable. And if we are applying the Gina Carano rule, I can see a whole lot of people at Disney losing their jobs right now. It's not just tied to Mark. It's tied to pretty much all the performative bologna sausage that went along with all the things today, including the news report that we covered. So truthfully, that's what's required in these moments, is for everybody to speak truth. We had some insane person do something despicable. They were compelled to do so by a larger amount of rhetoric than I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. The likes of which, I could only have imagined maybe back in the 40s. And that's disgusting to me. Doing all of the things that are being done right now, including Davro, these activities, these things to misdirect every piece of behavior that you're actually doing. You're gaslighting. You're essentially projecting what you feel onto everything else. That's all we're seeing right now. It is a whirlwind of propaganda, misinformation, and everything else. And of course, they accuse anybody who actually has the facts or any shred of detail. They tear them apart, and then they become the victim because they were pushed back against because of said facts, science, etc. I'm tired of it, but at the same time, there's a time and a place, just to refer to what Michelle said, because we don't have that anymore. And
did anyone live through the Red Scare?
Yeah, of course I did. I'm old.
Okay, so if you lived through that, does this feel reminiscent of that at all?
This is way beyond the pale. Even beyond the idea that my parents talk about being taught to climb under a desk. I'm like, that ain't gonna work, kids. It's gonna go up like a matchstick anyway.
My dad talks about that all the time.
Yeah, it's like
why am I under a desk?
Those desks were mighty sturdy, Culture. Very sturdy desks back in the day.
Lead paint. I'm just saying, maybe it wasn't a bad idea.
Well, I do know this.
But now, before we go any further, we do have a member chat for Michelle. Michelle, I want to make sure we get this before you head out. Space Dave 2000, member for 14 months, and we love Space Dave. Check him out on That Game Place, Culture Casino over there, leading the helm there. Michelle, how should we respond as Christians? And Michelle, too, broadly, if you want to talk about those who hold Judeo-Christian beliefs and how they might respond, that could be helpful.
Well, a scripture immediately popped in my mind out of Ephesians: "Be angry and sin not. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath." Basically, I would say I was not shocked by anything that happened yesterday. I have been praying for President Trump for a while now, and I pray for Biden too. I don't want any one of them to get killed. But I would just say, as a Christian, or as you said, Judeo as well, I would just say that we need to pray. We need to pray for safety. We need to pray for our nation. Prayer is the best thing I think that we can do. Because it is what it is. It's unfortunate we are where we are as a nation. And I just think prayer is the very best thing that we can offer. I know some people on Twitter act like that doesn't mean anything, but it does. So I say do that.
Ron, any thoughts from the Jewish perspective? And also, if you start off quoting Joshua, I'm going to get more nervous than other books.
No. There's no distinction here. I think we all see the issues the same way. There's, morally speaking, it's very straightforward. I mean, I think it's important to go back to your original question, which was, how does this comport with the Gina case? And we actually, in discussing this issue before, both on your program and on Valiant, we talked about this idea that, generally speaking, an employer has the prerogative to fire someone for expressing views that they just don't want to be associated with. California law happens to make that particularly difficult. And Disney's position is, well, under the First Amendment, people are going to, we should be able to fire someone because the First Amendment gives us a right to control what our messaging is. So then we were asking, to what extent do people really associate an actor or actress's comments with the company itself? And then we used some extreme examples, right? So, and I gave the example, I think, of Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson doesn't work in Hollywood anymore because he's pretty, and he's a super talented man. But he's not only anti-Semitic, but he can't keep his mouth shut about it being anti-Semitic. I suppose if I worked in Hollywood for any appreciable amount of time, I'd be anti-Semitic myself. But I think
I never thought we'd have to clip something out from Ron Coleman about.
Well, I mean, I don't think I would have much use for Hollywood Jews at all, starting now, and I've never worked there at all. But so there, but on the other hand, California law does prohibit some measure of this. But we do start with the premise that the company can decide. And I do think, though, that this is a great, if Gina's, let's put it this way, Gina's, I think, gonna win the motion to dismiss. It hasn't been decided yet. Her lawyers might consider putting in a supplemental submission demonstrating, because if you remember, in their opposition to the motion to dismiss by Disney, they cited a number of awful Disney talent comments that evidently Disney did not find particularly offensive. So they might want to throw this one onto the fire as an additional example for the court to consider. I think you raise a good point there.
Well said. Michelle, I know you've got to head on out, but tell the folks out there what they can expect from Force of Light Entertainment.
Yes, you can catch us over there at Force of Light, my sister and I, but I will have my final review of the show that we call The Acolyte coming out this Tuesday. And then I'll also be reviewing the new Twisters, I think comes out this week. So we'll see if that's any good or not. But definitely go subscribe to Force of Light Entertainment. If you want to, I just did a live stream kind of showing everything that happened over the weekend. Well, not everything, but we had fun, so you can go check that out. But thank you so much for having me on. I will end it with that is what I would say we should do.
What was the best part of the convention, Michelle?
It's hard because it's like, it was so great to meet Gina, but it's also just great to hang out with people like, Valiant, Nick of Echo Base. I got to meet Tabitha, Dreaming of Tabitha, Jay, just to see all these people that I've come to respect. And it's so fun to get to meet YouTubers or people that are in our chats in person. So that was what made the weekend for me.
Hold on a second. Michelle, where is the little stuffed drunk 3PO plushie behind you?
He is downstairs because I'm going to go see Jay tomorrow at Dollywood, and I forgot to take it with me because I had it up there for a video last time because I want him to sign his little foot. So the Canadian bear is going with me, but I will show you this. I
just wanted to make sure he didn't come by and steal the bear.
He did not steal my bear, but I did get my Gina Funko Pop finally signed.
Awesome.
I'm really excited.
She should
Did
be
we
a
just
doctor.
confirm Michelle is 12 foot tall? Can you stand up?
The roof doesn't.
The camera's got an angle.
Oh,
the roof has an angle. It goes down.
Okay. Just making sure.
Well, Michelle, thank you for being here.
Oh, I was just gonna say he could go see the picture of me standing next to Jay. I am tall. I'm just not that tall. So
I've heard Jay was actually extremely short in real life. I've never met him, but yeah.
No, that man is fucking massively tall and large.
Nah, I don't think so.
Mike Towers
I've hung
over
out
him.
with him
Mike
multiple
Towers.
times. What are you talking about? I've known him
That's
for like
not
6
that's
years.
not what the Wikipedia page says. I'm just saying. You know.
Are you on Wikipedia again? We told you not to use that.
Michelle's got to go.
That's
She's
a
got a
different story.
commitment.
All right.
All right, Michelle,
Well,
get out of
thank-
here. Get out of here, Michelle.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. And yes, last thing I'll say is just pray for both President Trump and Biden for their safety, but just, for our nation in general. But you guys have an awesome rest of your chat, and I will see you guys soon.
Good night, Michelle.
Bye.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, and as Michelle leaves, another joins the panel, folks. Who could it be?
Who could that be? Let's go see, boys and girls.
All right, folks, it is Lauren Connor. Lauren, welcome to the show. As we do the, there we go, twisting everybody around there. Lauren, we've been talking about Mark Hamill and the vile thing that he has posted out here, where, yes, he says that there's no place in violence. He's happy that Trump is okay. And then he goes on to put forth these disingenuous, I think that's as generous as I can be, these disingenuous claims about the former president as if that is somehow justifying in some small way what happened. Lauren, if we apply the Gina Carano standard to this from Disney, what should happen here in your estimation? And even just from a corporate common sense standpoint, what do you think Disney should do when their actors are acting this way?
Well, I suppose the first thing that I would say is I think everybody right now ought to be thinking real carefully about anything that they want to say online for a little bit. This is a time for some pretty serious self-reflection and considering how we've allowed our speech to get to the level that it is to allow you to demonize people with different opinions from the other side of the aisle and consider them less than human. And so just as a starting point, I think everybody ought to be pausing on posting just about anything when it comes to these kind of things. As to Mark Hamill himself, if you don't mind me using his X tag, I don't think there's really a need for Mark to be involved in anything going forward anyway. He's been brought in primarily as a courtesy because he's attached to the legacy character, and Lucasfilm has wanted to show respect to him for his work in the past and to allow him to be on set and give pointers to the people who are actually acting as the stand-ins. But that's a courtesy. It's not something that's necessary going forward if you're going to be using Luke. And I think there's lots of potential options that they could use there if they want to continue to use Luke and they don't want to use Mark. Will they do that? Probably not. He has the opinion that their side heavily favors. But should that happen? Yeah, I think it probably should. I think it's time to stop tolerating this kind of nonsense. And we need to get back to a place where we recognize that those on the other side of the aisle might have some valid opinions and that we're all allowed to have our opinions without being under threat.
Right. We need each other. We need each other. A lot of times, your place in politics is sort of determined by your psychological proclivities, I guess is the way I would say it. And we've got to find a way to get along. But I also think that part of getting along is all sides need to tell the truth. And this my truth junk, I'm over it, because all it is it's anti-logos. It's an anti-God position. It's an anti-science position. It's anti-objectivity position. And our news media, our corporations have follied with it, and it's faltering the nation. This idea that there is no objective truth. It's whatever you believe. And power and narrative that's what we should believe in. Enough of it. I have seen enough. But Mike, I have not seen enough super chats. Here we go.
You know, it turns me on when you say you want to read.
That was a hell of a segue. That I really, I might make a super chat just for that.
The C-Man for $5 says, WDW Pro, can we get your channel and that Parker Place over on Rumble? I am sure Culture could help out.
See, man, we're working on quite a few things right now, including getting the Pro Show onto Spotify and Apple and all of that. So many things in the works, and we'll see about Rumble. We have a channel for WDW Pro on Rumble. I'm sure we can get that part placed over there as well. It's all being worked on. There's just so many cogs in this clock, but it keeps ticking, and we don't want to make that stop.
Going Shogi for $5 says Disney is using money from Inside Out 2. What's DP3? Deadpool 3 and Parks to fund the peddling of this propaganda. Gotta stop pretending just because a shiny movie is dangled.
Yep.
The amazing thing about Inside Out 2 is that despite its profits, and the profits we surmise will happen off of Deadpool and Wolverine, they pale in comparison to the losses that we believe might be happening at Disney parks as people seem to not be going anymore. That's a huge, huge story, and we'll be covering it over the next weeks. So hang tight. We'll go there. Go and Shogi.
William Thompson, a supporter for the last 7 months as a member, says, sorry, guys, I ditched you for two lovely ladies. Wait, what? Sorry, guys, I ditched you for two lovely ladies.
Force of Light Entertainment.
Force of Light Entertainment. Mexican Iron Man, I see you don't try to hide you are a YouTuber for all time. I am not a YouTuber. I am here today as a guest super chat reader. Thank you, William Thompson, for your support.
You are the substitute executive producer extraordinaire, of course.
Yeah, I'm the DEI hire of the day. I see Cthulhu for $5 says, can anyone explain how royalties work for the picture everyone is now using? I hope that person gets a huge payday no matter the politics.
So, guys, that photo was taken. I'm trying to remember. Was that the Associate Press? Did AP have that photo? So that journalist, now I know that it's being shared all over X and Twitter and all of that, but if it's going to be used on any of the major networks,
that's going to be a thing. You're 100% right. I was involved. Remember when there were the 9/11 picture of the firefighter standing in front of the X, in front of the cross in the rubble, and that picture was used by a lot of people. And one of them was Sarah Palin, and she got sued, and I represented her in that lawsuit, which eventually settled. She paid him the price of a shoebox or something. It was so stupid. But right now, they really can't stop people from using it on social media. It's when people, it's a little bit, it's a different. It's a different landscape now. What I do wonder is whether there's only one picture. There might be, like in the Iwo Jima situation, that many people took the same picture at the same time.
Right.
In which case, whether it's watermarked or, it might get interesting. But you're asking a good question.
But it was also featured on Time Magazine. So, and I assume it's the same one. It could be different, like you're saying. If it's the same one, compensation, one would presume, occurred once it hit Time Magazine. That would be just
Time Magazine probably doesn't own it. They probably purchased first use rights,
right,
but not exclusive. This is the case generally with freelance photographers, or even which is how most of them operate.
Moments like I know they hate Trump. I know they hate Trump, but surely that's a Pulitzer. I mean, that will become one of the most iconic photos in the history of America.
Don't call me Shirley. I think we've discussed this before.
Is that an airplane reference?
It is.
Pro, I'm going to call foul on you. You misgendered him. SFX 314 Sabretooth Raptor, who's been a member for 11 months, says Mexican Iron Man is or man, and pro keep growing. What does that mean?
Pretty sure he meant he is our man.
Oh, Mexican Iron Man is our man, and pro keep growing. All right.
And an excellent super chat reader.
I've been blowing it all day and night. I'm rusty. Daryl the Derelict for $5.
What up, Daryl?
Says, Iger's response to yesterday is almost verbatim what Biden and Harris said. Those two were identical. Democrats don't have good writers either. Sheesh.
When they all say the same thing, you got to wonder if it's coming from spontaneity or if it's coming from a shared screed.
Have you seen the press rolls before where they do all the major news networks
yes.
and they are
Well, they're
like literally verbatim in cadence and everything, the exact same thing on every single network? It's insane.
Amazing how those teleprompters work. And folks, we want to apologize. We had to get in Michelle's outro in an appropriate fashion and all of that. Normally, when people drop hundreds, we pull those super chats up quickly. So apologies on not doing that as fast and as expediently as usual. Mike, go ahead.
I'm interrupting myself, see? Tan Green for $100. Thank you so much for your support. John Adams once said, and I quote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Morality and virtue are the foundation of our republic and necessary for a society to be free. This is the problem in this country." And I agree wholeheartedly. We are a republic, not a democracy.
We're a constitutional republic.
We're a constitutional republic because democracies are
it's a pedantic point. Forget it. Don't get hung up on that, please. Okay.
What I would say is morality is the bedrock of any civilization. Go ahead, Ron.
What does this have to do with pediatrics, Ron? Come on.
No, Ron, make your point. I don't want it to be obscured by the audio. What was your point, Ron?
That our republic has important democratic features, and whenever someone says that we're a democracy, which has been said in America since almost at the beginning of the republic, no one meant to say that it was literally a pure democracy. That would be silly. The people,
right? A pure democracy would be exceedingly difficult to run.
They're also republics.
I think that's true if you're ascribing honest intentions to everybody involved. But I think that there is
you're 100% right. The people are using the term democracy as a way to disparage their view of democracy, which is with a capital D. You're 100% right. And when they do that, then we call them out.
It doesn't matter what rules and regulations, what standards you put out. If your average person doesn't feel safe, if your communities no longer operate based on shared morality, then everything devolves into chaos. You can't have a top-down dogma. Your morality has to move in every direction of the social hierarchy. That's the only true way to have these principles work. And I think John Adams is exactly right. And Tan Green, I want to thank you for your $100 super chat. Very kind of you and well taken.
I would actually push back on that slightly because
what do you got, Lauren?
The whole point of the way that our government was set up was the understanding that man is flawed and that at heart he is not a wholly good and moral creature. And so we set up these systems of laws and checks and balances in the government to try and frustrate the ability of that to be exploited, so that we have that's the whole point of the government in the first place, is recognizing that men are not going to be angels on their own, and so there has to be some system to deal with that. So I think, while I get the intent of what Adams was saying, I don't agree with him that the constitutional republic that we set up is only in place for a good and moral people, because as a whole, we're not. That's why we have laws.
What if it's cyclical?
That's a great point.
What if it's Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same
go
thing.
ahead,
Go ahead. No, I'm with you. Go ahead. No, finish it. You were going to say.
I was just going to say the I think what makes this function is that the people, the average people, we are the people, we are the government, and that government is formed via people searching out idealistically the best ideals of those in the community to find their best representatives. And so that is supposed to then percolate up the highest moral compass in an individual, brought up then either to the state or to the federal government to represent the ideals and the best that we can aspire to be. The problem is that we've put liars and cheats all in it. So how's that going to go for us?
That's my point exactly, Pro. The moment we stopped exemplifying American exceptionalism is when we lost the country.
I blame it on lawyers.
All right, next super chat. Thank you, Tan Green. Cichlid for $20 says, now, bullying is why this 20-year-old did what he did. When I was that age, I had done almost 3 years in the U.S. Army, being yelled at and pushed to, quote, be all I can be and get up as early as I can. Turned a boy into a man.
In other words, you were bullied, Cichlid. You were bullied to become a better man.
Right. It works.
That's right. Into taking on major responsibility.
I would like to bully Lauren into watching The Acolyte because I'm pretty bummed out that I haven't seen him suffer. I was waiting for this for a year.
You all know
Mike,
my
we're trying to set up a charitable stream where Lauren watches The Acolyte, and we take all the super chats and all the money donated, and we give it to a cause, children with some sort of need, and we're trying to force Lauren into it. He turns green though every time we suggest he watch The Acolyte. I don't know what it is.
I just don't see how. Watch me gaslight him. Watch this, pro. I don't see how Lauren can be an expert in Star Wars if he hasn't seen all of it.
The Acolyte is not Star Wars.
Facts.
Shit.
He set you up and you knocked it down.
Damn it. All right, next super chat. Photon Empress for $100. Woo! Yikes. Says, Photon Empress disagrees. Says that I think Iger cares about his personal wealth. Yes, but he also cares about his legacy. I think he will go scorched earth to try and save his legacy. I think she's on point here. What say you?
She's wrong.
What?
Ron, at the highest levels, when you interact with people at the pedigree of Bob Iger in terms of socioeconomic status, class, and fame, do you tend to run across people who are highly interested in their legacy, or are they highly interested in the present?
No, look, we're first of all, most of us extremely high-level people are vain, and we do care about our legacies, but I think in Hollywood, people do tend to measure their legacies by their bank accounts.
Mm.
And if it's a choice between more money and more enduring respect, they will choose the money every time.
Yeah, their legacy exists in their lifetime for them.
Makes a point. Of course, he's a vain person, and he wants to be, and also look, if you're a public person, you have a public reputation, and you want to have, the problem is he's made such a mess of his legacy, and he is so surrounded by a culture of flattery and reinforcement of all his own views of the world and of himself. It seems extremely unlikely that he's ever going to get any kind of realistic advice about how to manage that legacy. But Photon, if the extent that you're saying that the comment today is an attempt by him to moderate his reputation so that he seems less of an ideologue, that probably makes sense.
Isn't this just a case of kind of the echoes, though? So you have somebody who's completely obsessed with their image. They finally decide, okay, politics is probably never going to happen. But now we're in this space where something big happens. He feels the need to. He feels the need to comment on this stuff just because that's who he was.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that if you're egotistical and narcissistic, then
he's a player, right?
You got to comment, right? Yeah. And Photon Empress, we want to thank you again. Such a great supporter of the channel. You help us keep the lights on and those
that's a nice,
nuclear
nice
hamsters fed. Very, very.
Mr. Buttcrack
do
Media.
3 more super chats. 3 more.
Mr. Buttcrack Media, who's been a member for 50 months, says, Hail Pro, and to all on the panel and to all in chat.
Hail,
thank you, Mr. Buttcrack Media. And please keep the juices flowing.
What?
SFX314 Sabretooth Raptor for $5 says, Mexican Iron Man, I'm not really fond of Alf, but I'd watch Alf, then Alolite, and some other current modern shows and movies. Well, I was recently asked on Doomcock stream by a super chatter, would I watch Alf or The Acolyte? And I actually voted for The Acolyte because there's less episodes, and I'd be in and out of there sooner than if I had to watch all the Alf stuff.
Mike, this is a two-parter. What's the second part say?
SFX314 Sabretooth Raptor wasting his $5 again on Alf-related super chat says, I'd watch Alf and the movie I had nightmares about and didn't like it at all, which is Labyrinth, then Alolite, or Star Trek Discovery and alike. Well, you're better. You're a good man. You're a good man. Anyone that thinks Alf is worth watching is a man of fortitude, a man of strength like SFX314, and I salute you for enduring such a piece of crap show. Thank you.
I read that as
You're the one who's out of this world, sweet baby. You're the one who's out of this world.
That's fine. I didn't want to make.
Sorry, Mike. It's automated.
X-Wing was gonna say
Sorry.
something.
X-Wing, when Alf is mentioned, it just plays. I can't.
I read that as STDEIs, which works because it's a virus, right? STDEIs.
Right. You had to go there.
All right. I'm going to go cry in my car for a little bit. I'll see you guys.
Where are you going? No, get back here. Get back here.
All right. I'm back. Sorry.
All right, guys, let's talk about something that's actual box office for a minute, if that's okay with everybody. And let's go back to normal for a moment. No, not you, Mark. We don't want you anymore. Get out of here. Why, it's the Hollywood Reporter. This feels more like a normal show. Here we go. Pamela McClintock, the author of this one, says box office Despicable Me 4 easily wins with $44.7 million as Longlegs stuns with record $22.6 million launch. All right, here's the news you need to know, folks. Animation continued to be the hero of the summer box office thanks to Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2. But Neon's Longlegs could rightly take a bow after scoring the biggest opening for an independent horror pick in a decade with $22.6 million in ticket sales. From Illumination and Universal, Despicable Me 4 easily stayed atop the domestic box office chart in its second weekend with a $44.7 million from 4,449 theaters. By the way, folks, when it says anything north of 4,000, it's taken over the theaters. It's taken over the cinemas. This one's basically at 4,500. It's everywhere. $211.1 million is the North American tally. Overseas grew, and the mischievous Minions also continue to stir up strong sales, earning $88 million from 78 markets for a foreign tally of 226. That's $437.8 million globally. I think this is heading towards upper $800 million territory. It's not going to beat Inside Out 2 at the box office, which is what I said as soon as I saw Despicable Me 4. I was very hopeful for it until I saw it. I said, well, there's just not an emotional hook here enough to get it over that hump. But here's the big news, folks. Despicable Me 4, if we were to scroll down, it has done something that no other has done before, and that is, in a notable milestone, the Despicable Me Minions franchise has crossed $5 billion in global ticket sales, a feat no animated franchise has ever achieved before. And of note as well, Shrek is the second highest grossing animated franchise, followed by Toy Story, Shrek being revived and revivified, coming out in 2026, followed by a Donkey movie. Eddie Murphy has confirmed that. So Disney's competitors are seeing an opening and they are going for it. But for right now, Despicable Me 4 leads and Inside Out 2 will hang on to the animation crown. Now we'll find out which of these movies will be biggest. It'll be either Inside Out 2 or Moana 2. One of those will be the top animated grossing film of the year. Panel, any thoughts on the salvation of cinemas this summer through animation? Not quite, I think, what we were expecting, especially given the difficulty that Pixar gave itself by having the character of anxiety personified. Tough to make families go and see or put their little kids in front of a cute anxiety character, but somehow it's worked, and perhaps off the Barbie demographic. Any thoughts on this? As grown men, I know you're all going to have much to say about Inside Out 2.
I saw Despicable Me 4 with my kid. He loved it. He was not interested in Inside Out 2. He saw the first one, I guess, on replay, but he wasn't interested in it. But he loved Despicable Me 4. We had a blast with it. Opening night. I think it's a question of timing. Disney was first out of the gate with animation, and they didn't blow it, and they didn't screw themselves over by being woke.
Mike, what do you think about this idea that I've put forth that Inside Out 2 is grabbing hold of that Barbie demographic? This is the second time we've seen a female anthem film really explode in the summer, and I'm starting to think that there's a demographic out there that wasn't there maybe before. You didn't see this with Clueless or Pretty in Pink. You didn't see this with The Breakfast Club, but all of a sudden, women are going out in droves and taking their daughters to see things like Barbie and Inside Out 2. Is it a shift? Is it a change?
Well, yeah, I think you and Tom Connors are right. You and Tom have been talking about, Tom and Midnight Six have been talking about this since before the movie opened, that this was going to happen, and it did happen. I mean, I think that's 100% the case. I mean, this is a chick flick, or, you know, by and large, and it's the right age group. You know, it's young girls can take their kids, young women can take their kids.
Imagine marketing a product in a female market to females and having it work.
Yeah.
Well,
as
I have
opposed
one.
to taking a male market.
Well, but I have one question, gentlemen, and this is the important one.
What?
Is it moving merchandise?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Barbie?
No, Inside Out 2.
Inside Out 2.
Sure.
Barbie moved merchandise. Inside Out 2, I don't think so. What I do know is, according to AMC, it moved the most amount of merchandise ever with Despicable Me 4.
Yeah. Like the Minion stuff is everywhere. There's a real fart gun on the market, which I would have bought when I was a kid. 100%.
The enthusiasm you say that with is not lost upon me. But yes, kids love fart guns and falsetto. Who would have ever thought? Gibberish reigns supreme. Ron, you are not a man of gibberish, though, and folks who would like to find out what you have to say can find you. There are very few, actually, out there who have not yet followed you somewhere. Tell the folks where they might be able to follow your discourse.
Ron Coleman on X is usually where you find things out, but if you haven't followed me on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you would, because you know, as I said earlier in the chat, I've got a friend and neighbor who just hit the 100,000 mark on Friday, and it's kind of embarrassing now for me to. I mean, of course, he does it for a living.
Subscribe.
But I mean, I was very big on supporting Joe, but now that he's such a big deal, I can't even really like him. No, I'm so happy. I went over to his house on Shabbos to give him personal congratulations. It's fantastic news for him. But you know, let's get me to 12,000. What do you say?
Subscribe to Ron Coleman.
Do it, folks. We can.
If not, you're going to get food.
Content. I promise. It pays. It pays off. Catch you later, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
See you, Ron. Nice to meet
Later,
you.
Ron. All right, folks. Continuing right along, we'll put Lauren up there. Here we go. We've got more news to cover, folks. We'll get back to those super chats. Remember, no super chats left behind.